The Otsutsuki are some of the most powerful antagonists we have seen in all of anime and manga, with each new one that is introduced being even more terrifyingly powerful than the last. These beings have been shown to possess some of the most outrageously broken abilities we have ever seen, like the ability to travel through multiple dimensions using space-time ninjutsu, an ability that is common to all the Otsutsuki, existing separately from their individual abilities. And yet, even among this group of Celestial Clan members, there is one in particular that stands out due to his strength, and that is none other than Ishikki Otsutsuki. Ishiki to this day retains his spot as the second most powerful character to ever debut in the combined Naruto/Boruto series, and is without a shadow of doubt the most powerful Otsutsuki we have seen so far, only being surpassed by a fully powered Baryon mode Naruto, and even that could be somewhat contested, seeing as Ishiki mildly outlasted Naruto's Baryon mode over the course of their fight, and was able to eventually overpower Naruto enough to use him as a hostage to threaten Kawaki to surrender. But I'm not saying all of this to say Ishiki in any shape or form is as strong as Naruto in his Baryon mode, and I'm sure the outcome of that particular fight would have been different if Naruto hadn't been severely damaged earlier on in the fight. And that's if you're going by the anime version. But the manga version of this fight lets us do a better comparison based on power alone, as Naruto wasn't damaged at all and was even able to land a kick on Ishiki in his base form. Anyways, I'll save the Baryon mode Naruto talk for another video, so if that's something you guys would be interested to see, go ahead and leave a comment down below indicating that or mentioning any other characters you might be interested in seeing me talk about. And while you're at it, you could go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on whatever character I decide to talk about next. That being said, for this video, I've decided I'm going to be breaking down all of Ishiki's abilities, particularly the two most useful abilities and the most formidable ones, starting with the Sukuna Hikona and then moving on to the Daikokuten, which is Ishiki's exclusive jutsu, later on in the video. And I think going about this analysis like this in tandem would help paint a better picture of just how strong Ishikki Otsutsuki was. Alright, so in order to talk about Ishikki Otsutsuki, we first have to talk a little bit about his earlier form, Jigen. Now, I thought about making a video on Jigen entirely, but I already knew this was going to be a long one, so I decided I'd just squeeze him in here. Also, for the sake of this video, I needed to give a brief rundown of who/what Jigen was, to better help us understand the difference in power between Ishiki and Jigen. Okay, so for the sake of those of us who don't know, here's what kind of went down. Ishiki and Kaguya came to Earth to plant the divine tree and harvest its fruit. Kaguya betrayed Ishiki, but the gravely injured Ishiki survives by using his secret jutsu Sukuna Hikona to shrink himself down and enter into Jigen's brain, where he lived like a parasite, and eventually he was able to completely take over Jigen's body. So in reality, there was never really a Jigen, it was always Ishiki, and Jigen was basically Ishiki's human meat suit. Anyway, he then implants a karma on Jigen, which had time to fully extract over the thousands of years, but Jigen's body was originally far too weak to contain Ishiki's incredibly massive big boy chakra, hence Ishiki's full revival could not be completed, and in essence he was almost completely nerfed. So let's get into the Jigen section of this video proper. Now, while he lived as Jigen, he was still capable of using the Sukuna Hikona, though this was the only one of Ishiki's hidden jutsu he was able to utilize, and it was kind of overpowered enough in its own right. But the Daikokuten was completely out of Jigen's jutsu arsenal until Ishiki was fully revived, and I'll explain more of that as the video goes on. Okay, so before I go any further, let me explain a bit of what the Sukuna Hikona is. The Sukuna Hikona is Ishiki's hidden jutsu that gives him the ability to shrink any non-living matter, with himself being the exception, and instantly return them back to their normal size whenever he desires. And there haven't been any particular limits stated to how small he can make these things, though it would be safe to assume he can make things at the very least microscopic, based on the fact that Sasuke's Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in the Sasuke Hiden, in particular, granted him the visual acuity to track things that are in motion at microscopic levels. And as if being able to shrink any weapon or things thrown at him wasn't already broken enough, he could also use the Sukuna Hikona on himself, like I mentioned earlier. Now, this might not seem like much of an issue at first glance, but it's actually an incredibly huge problem for about 99% of his opponents. And while in this stage, his miniaturized stage, he was still able to absorb chakra and ninjutsu, and he also retains the ability to create space-time portals as well as create and utilize his black chakra rods for attacks. And in addition to all the powers the karma grants its user, like chakra absorption, the space-time ninjutsu portals I mentioned earlier, and chakra blast, Jigen's specialty to create the unlimited six paths chakra rods, combined with the physical boost in strength and speed that came with the karma, made him already a top tier fighter in the series. And due to his karma being fully extracted in Jigen, he had access to as much of Ishiki's power as his 1,000-year-old decrepit human body could handle. But I mean, like I said earlier, it was still more than enough. I mean, just look at Naruto and Sasuke versus Jigen. That couldn't have made it more clear the level of power we were dealing with when it came to Jigen. And in his version 2 Karma state, he was able to casually blitz adult Sasuke, kick him out of his perfect Susanoo, while also calling him slow. Like, talk about disrespectful, man. And then go on to punch Naruto out of his Kurama avatar form right after. And then he beat them till they were completely out of options, and he absorbed Sasuke's last ditch effort attack, the Amaterasu, while telling him that the rules basically don't apply to him. Like, talk about overpowered. Anyway, following that, Jigen gets pushed to his physical limits against Naruto and Sasuke, which we all know, and then he gets ambushed by Kashin Koji and he gets burnt alive. And this is when we get to see Ishiki emerge. Alright, so this is where we start to get more into like the meat of the video, right? So after Ishiki's resurrection, things take a completely different turn. I mean, the writers really wanted to make it clear that the difference in power between Jigen and Ishiki was like night and day. And let me explain by giving you guys a clear-cut example, using the Sukuna Hikona. So now, during his battle with Kashin Koji, you could clearly see Jigen struggle a lot to use the Sukuna Hikona, as his body was severely weakened from his previous battle, and he used the Sukuna Hikona very sparingly and only attempting to shrink jutsu when he absolutely needed to. And ultimately, he wasn't able to shrink the eternally burning flames of Mount Kaien that Koji had summoned, and he was completely consumed by them and burnt alive. However, as soon as Jigen died and Ishiki was revived, things completely took a 180, as Ishiki immediately shrunk all of the flames, making them disappear instantly. The anime version of this fight particularly highlights what happened and makes it a lot clearer than the manga version, because in the manga version we see him burning in one panel and then he's completely fine in the next, whereas in the anime we see him shrink the flames, like sound effects and all, and Kashin Koji even says it. Another clear indicator of the massive difference in strength between Jigen and Ishiki was Ishiki's access to the Daikokuten, which was an ability that was attached to his personal dojutsu. A dojutsu that was never particularly given a name, but the fan base has decided to call the Dharmagan due to its resemblance to a wheel. So some of you are probably asking, what even is a Daikokuten and how is it different from the Sukuna Hikona? Well, don't worry, I'll explain that as well. The Daikokuten is Ishiki's second secret hidden jutsu, and it gives him the ability to store whatever he shrinks using the Sukuna Hikona in his personal dimension where time doesn't flow, and he's able to retrieve these things at any time. Alright, so to give an example as well as to draw the connection between the Sukuna Hikona and the Daikokuten, as they are two very complementary jutsu, let us examine the high-speed black rods that Jigen and eventually Ishiki used to fight. Now, while fighting his opponents, he would shrink the rods, Jigen or Ishiki, whoever it was, would shrink the rods using the Sukuna Hikona after creating them. Now, according to the guides provided alongside the volume releases, we're made to understand that he creates these rods using his own chakra, the same way Kaguya, Madara, Jubito, and any other reasonable six-path character would create them. And then he manipulates their size using the Sukuna Hikona. So, to those of you out there that thought Jigen just walked around carrying a bunch of miniature rods in his pockets. I'm really sorry to burst your bubble, but that wasn't the case. Um, he would then use these shrunken rods on his opponents without them even realizing they had been stabbed, and then return them back to the original size to inflict damage on his opponents, kind of like Sasuke explained to us during his fight with Jigen. Now, in contrast to this, right, Ishiki was more shown to use the Daikokten for far more devastating attacks. To make this clearer, I'll list a few of the different instances where Ishiki used the Daikokten as opposed to the Sukuna Hikona. The first time he displayed this jutsu was against Kashin Koji. Now, using this jutsu, he was instantly able to crush Kashin Koji's limbs and left flank using the pillars that he had shrunk earlier on in their fight while he was still spamming the Sukuna Hikona. He used the Daikokten again when he dropped massive pillars on a team of Konoha Jonin, consisting of Lee, Choji, Konohamaru, Kiba, and Tenten. And honestly, I don't know why they thought they could fight him, but effectively he one-shotted them in the anime version of this fight. So yeah, there's that. He also used the Daikokten multiple times during his fight against Naruto and Sasuke, and Boruto whenever he dropped his gigantic cubes on the battlefield, in both the anime and manga versions of this fight. So those were all instances where he used the Daikokten as opposed to the Sukuna Hikona. So basically he shrunk those pillars and cubes using the Sukuna Hikona, stored them in his pocket dimension without time, and then he retrieved them whenever and wherever he wanted, which that is the Daikokten. Also, fun fact about those cubes, he was shown to be able to move them in the horizontal directions to use them to attack his opponents, well, namely Sasuke, in the manga versions of the fight. I know in the anime versions, we only see him just drop the cubes and never really move them in any of the directions, but yeah, in the manga, he was far more like dangerous with it, man. He would move those things horizontally and just knock the shit out of Sasuke. Alright, now for the rest of this video, I will be answering the main question of this video by referencing Ishiki's fight with Naruto and Sasuke, and well, Boruto was also there, so we have to include him, and subsequently his fight against Baryon Mode Naruto, as these are the fights where we really get to see Ishiki use most of his abilities. Alright, in order to do this, we'll start with the basics of speed and strength, and for the sake of this video, I'll be referencing the manga version of this fight. Though in any iteration of the fight, Ishiki's speed was absolutely no joke, as immediately the fight begins, we see him easily outspeed both Naruto and Sasuke to get a hold of Boruto. And it was so bad that Naruto didn't even realize what had happened, and Sasuke had to orient him to their location. And even after Sasuke switched places with Boruto using the Amenete Chikara and tried to use the Chidori on Ishiki, Ishiki just caught him. And we all know that Sasuke at this point could easily destroy meteors with his Chidori, and that is really lowballing it. But we also know what happens to Sasuke after his Chidori gets caught. I mean, it was pretty much curtains for Sasuke from that point on. And things were so bad that even Shikamaru and the rest of the cast, including Kawaki and Sumire, were worried as to how the fight would go and if they would be able to hold Ishiki off. Mind you, not actually win, but hold him off till enough time passes. And Amado flat out stated that he could see why they would all be worried, comparing their raw strength to Ishiki's, but Boruto holds a potential value that at that point in the series we didn't know about. The next impressive thing we see Ishiki do is constantly shrink any ninjutsu or chakra-based attack that Naruto attempted to use against him. Now, I will point out that between the initial speed blitz and the Rasengan shrinking, Naruto had powered up significantly into his complete 6 spots Kurama chakra mode, and he was fighting very aggressively. I mean, this wasn't the first time we've seen an Otsutsuki completely eliminate ninjutsu from the battle, as even Momoshiki was able to do this. And yes, although Momoshiki is my personal favorite Otsutsuki, I can with clear judgment and objectivity say that Ishiki is indeed stronger than Momoshiki, though in terms of potential it becomes a completely different conversation, seeing as Momoshiki was a fairly young Otsutsuki still. Anyway, Ishiki throughout the fight continues to slap around both Naruto and Sasuke and even drags them through the mud. And he even ends up dropping one of those Daikoku 10 cubes on Naruto in the anime version of the fight. Now, in the manga version of the fight, he actually goes after Sasuke first and actually tries to kill him using his own sword. And we still get the Boruto saving Sasuke moment, although it is still short lived, as Ishiki decides to use Sasuke as a surfboard on land and then drops multiple Daikoku 10 cubes on him. So in the anime version, Naruto takes the brunt of the beating, but in the manga version, well, I'll just say Sasuke really got done dirty and leave it at that. Ichiki's reign of terror ultimately comes to an end when we get introduced to Baryon Mode Naruto, which is an entirely different beast. I mean, considering that it was a life-draining sacrificial gamble from the greatest Hokage of all time, leading to the death of Kurama, it is no surprise that this power greatly exceeded Ishiki's, as even Kurama during his explanation did state that their new energy should greatly surpass Ishiki's. I could go into a lot more detail about the specific nature of the Baryon Mode chakra, but I think this video is already long enough. And however, I would like to end this video by saying that although Ishiki was eventually defeated, it was one that came at a great cost to both Naruto and Sasuke, and if Naruto wasn't prepared to die to stop Ishiki, there would have been no possible way for them to win or even come close. And if Sasuke wasn't severely damaged and worried about Naruto, he probably wouldn't have, well, he probably would have, rather, seen Momoshiki's sneak attack coming. Though, if we go based off of continuity, we can see that Sasuke's Rinnegan was actually more of a nuisance to multiple Otsutsuki, namely Momoshiki and Ishiki, than Naruto's chakra pool was. Anyway, that's all for today's video, guys. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe so you don't miss the next upload, and most of all, have an awesome day. King and out.